Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming in and listening to our very first fantasy football podcast. If you're listening to this, there's a pretty good percentage that you might be one of our mothers. But if you happen to play fantasy football, we're here to help you. We're here to help you win your league. So we got a big bye week coming up. Week 8 has 6 teams on bye, and we are here to help you through that. My name is Dan Mountain. I'll be your host for this episode. And I'm sitting here with 2 wonderful co-hosts. If you want to just introduce yourself with your names.
I mean, wonderful is a strong word, but I'm George Eliopoulos, and I am excited to, as you said, help your fantasy football team win. I'm really just trying not to screw things up too badly for your team because, you know, sometimes the advice is good, sometimes not so good. But we're gonna do our best here, I promise. I'm a commissioner of my league, and I am a massive Rams fan, which normally in my life I've been kind of embarrassed to say because it sucks, but right now we're 5-2, so this is the pinnacle. So things are great in fantasy, things are great in the real world.
And my name is Darrian Matassa-Fung, and I'm friends with these 2 lads, and I love fantasy football. I'm a commissioner of 3 leagues. I'm a hardcore.
Big show. We get it.
I know, right? I know. I've been managing these leagues for a few years, and you know, I've won a couple, and I want to help out to some listeners and help you guys out and improve your teams. I played football for 15 years, all the way from flag to a high level in junior ball, and I'm a hardcore Giants fan.
So we just talked about the 2 teams that we're fans of, and we were just discussing with Daniel how his love of it, you said it comes from fantasy as opposed to the real deal. So we're going to get you on a team. Yeah. It's time for you to announce on public air right now who your favorite team is.
I mean, generally, I'm just generally a football fan, guys. Like, I don't really have one team, but if I had to pick just for you listeners today, right now, I'm picking the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And you're held to that forever. You're going to be held to that while Big Ben is contemplating retirement during Week 13 after Antonio Brown throws a fit and Martavis Bryant starts smoking weed.
And I know, I sound like a bandwagoner, but like, listen, Ben doesn't have much left in the tank, so it's not going to be bandwagoner.
Josh Dobbs time.
And I mean, while we're telling our fantasy football backgrounds, I mean, I got to be honest with you. Growing up, I was not much of a football fan. I was always a hockey fan. I've been doing hockey pools for my entire life. And then one year, my buddy's just like, yo, dude, you got to come do fantasy football with us. I'm not going to lie to you. That year, I lost. But I got so obsessed with fantasy football, I wanted to become better. I started listening to podcasts. I started looking at all the stats. I started looking at everything. I did all my research over the summer. I became so obsessed with fantasy football that, like, I can't even describe it to you guys. I came back. I won that league the next year after the first year just drafting out of a stupid magazine, and I drafted 2 tight ends for some reason from the same goddamn team. And then the next year I come back, and this guy, they're like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, I don't know. Like, I spent so much time divulging into fantasy football. I love it. I'm so passionate about it, and I can't wait to talk football with you boys.
All right, let's do it.
So
let's start.
We got some great segments on the docket for you guys. We got some dump, marry, kill. We're going to have some waiver wire witch hunt. We're going to have some dangerous defenses. We're going to break down some sneaky starts for you all, and we're going to talk about some guys to keep your eye on. But before we get into any of that, I think the listeners really want to know, guys, what do you think is going to happen with Ezekiel Elliott? Do you have any opinions on that?
Honestly, I have no idea, but I do know that I drafted him in the 2nd round this year, and he's about the only good thing I have going for my fantasy team, so I'm heavily invested. I'm just hoping for the best, but at the end of the day, who knows?
You know, if you look at years prior and you take Tom Brady's fiasco into account, and really nothing ever gets done quickly, so my best guess would be his suspension will be upheld, but it will be enforced in the next season.
I couldn't agree more. I think next season's when it's going to be enforced. So, I mean, if you can find a Zeke owner that's maybe panicking, I would definitely target him in a trade, because I honestly think this whole year it's just going to be appeal. He's already appealed an appeal. So, I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't just keep on appealing. He's given the rhetoric that he's completely innocent and he won't accept any kind of punishment. So, I have this feeling it's going to be taken on for the long haul, boys, and I think this whole season he's going to be in to go.
I hope so.
All right, so to get us started with a segment, it's going to be called Dump, Marry, Kill. So in this segment, we're going to give you a player that's in a weird predicament. Maybe they're not doing as well as you were hoping they do when you drafted them, and we're going to talk about whether you would dump them, meaning would you trade them to another team right now? Would you marry them, meaning would you keep them on your team and see where it goes? Or would you kill them, meaning you cut them to the waiver wire? And I just want to say, legally, this podcast is not endorsing actual murder. Like, I just want to put that out there right now. If we say kill, we mean cut. And if anything happens in reality where that player ends up to be dead, we had nothing to do with it. So I don't know.
I'm not saying it's endorsing anything, but like at the end of the day, if you lose your playoffs because of a player, I'm not saying don't kill him.
I'm not saying don't. I'm not trying to tell you what to do at all. That's my point. You know, we in no way endorse murder at all. So I mean, if anything seems to happen, listen, this podcast, we had nothing to do with it. Lawyers, you stay away from us.
All right, let's get to the big decisions then.
And to get us to our first guy, Terrell Pryor Sr. What would you guys do with that? Spoiler alert, I feel like George is going to kill him.
I may or may not have showed my hand on that one, but Terrell Pryor was a guy I was really high on this year. So I'm willing to own my mistakes. I was really high on him and Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook got injured, obviously, but Terrell Pryor was the one that I drafted, and he has been nothing but heartbreak for me. I watched him last year do phenomenal things with Cleveland with no quarterback, and I thought he was going to be a star this year, but he has done nothing with the number one opportunity. He's dropped numerous passes. He hasn't had more than 5 targets since week 1, and now all of a sudden you've got Jay Gruden talking about how Jamison Crowder's great, and then about how Josh Doxson was drafted to be the number 1 receiver. And you've also got Jordan Reed to contend with. I just don't see how targets are going to go the way of Terrell Pryor to make him a viable, consistent fantasy option. I'm killing him.
For me, I'm between dumping and marrying. Like, I don't think that you can dump him because I don't think that his value is high enough, but I also don't think that you can quite kill him because that offense, he could blow up at any moment. So I guess what I'm trying to say is dump him once he blows up. But my concern with him long term is if you look at the offense there in Washington, Kirk Cousins has a lot of mouths to feed. He's got Terrell Pryor, who's supposedly the number 1. He's got Josh Doxson. He's got Jamison Crowder. He's got Jordan Reed. He's got Vernon Davis, who they're keeping involved in the offense. And now he's got the pass catching back of Thompson. There's too many mouths, and I think Kirk Cousins is going to spread it out, so I don't see him as a reliable option week to week. But I do think he's got a blow up week coming. So if you can just wait for him to blow up, then wait for that and just trade him when you can.
Honestly, I don't really like Terrell Pryor this year at all. I thought he was a bit overhyped last year, playing on one of the worst teams in the league and just getting force-fed the ball. He got big money from the Redskins, so he will get his opportunities. They're not going to just, bench him. He's getting lots of money. He's going to get some targets. Crowder's been a bit of a bust. Doxson's had injury problems. Reed's had injury problems. Vernon Davis has been an excellent pickup for them, but he's a 4 or 5 catch maximum a game guy. I would just marry him for now, keep him on your bench. You're not going to get much out of him if you try and trade him. If you kill him and dump him onto the waiver wire, someone else is going to snag him up, I guarantee it. Just hold on for now. There's a long season left, and I still think he has a decent chance to finish the year at some sort of, decent level.
Okay, final point then is just that you mentioned that he got big money and he's going to get his opportunities. But I would also point out that Jay Gruden became the coach when Robert Griffin III was the quarterback who had immense loyalty to the owner and everything, and Jay Gruden did not care. And so I feel like he doesn't care about the money that Terrell Pryor has, and he's going to put him on the bench. So we'll see.
Fair enough. But I would also like to say Jay Gruden was the head coach during the offseason, and he might have played a big hand in bringing Pryor to the team.
Also fair enough.
So we don't know. Let's move on.
Ultimately, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with Terrell Pryor, but a guy we really don't know what's going to happen with. There's a really complicated situation going on in New England with their running backs. What do we do with Mike Gillislee?
I mean, this is anytime you're talking New England Patriots running back, and it's a terrible situation to deal with, and you're really throwing darts and hoping if you have any of those guys that it's just going to work out. I think that your best case scenario with Mike Gillislee is to dump him if anyone will take him off your hands, just because of the stress that's involved with having a running back like that. But I'm definitely, if I had to choose between killing him or marrying him, I'm marrying him because no one has established themselves yet as the main running back in New England, and despite the volatility that's normally common there, you have found in previous years that there has been a guy that's usually stepped up and become the touchdown vulture and maybe just churning out, I don't know, even if it's say 60 to 80 yards a game. I think that there's still a lot of potential for that, and just because of it, I'm holding on to him.
George, I hear you there, but I gotta disagree. He started the year strong. We had very high expectations for Gillislee. We thought he would step into that blunt role and, be a 15 possibly 15 touchdown plus guy. But it hasn't been there. He hasn't been running between the tackles well. He is absolutely a liability in the passing game. And I just really don't see any burst from him. He's a very limited running back at this point. And honestly, I think other running backs on the roster are doing better than him. We'll talk about them later. And I would just, I don't think there's any value in dumping him. No one's going to trade for him. I would say kill him.
I agree with that kill. I would also kill Mike Gillislee. Coming into the season, I told myself I will not draft a New England Patriots running back. I mean, it's just too complicated. You've got Mike Gillislee, you've got James White, you've got Dion Lewis, you've got Rex Burkhead. And Bill Belichick over there, he keeps his cards so close to his chest that nobody knows who's going to be the guy week to week. You cannot rely on Mike Gillislee on when to start him. If you look at Dion Lewis's carries, he got 13 last week and 11 the week before. Mike Gillislee had 8 and 10. Dion Lewis is encroaching in on that space that Mike Gillislee was supposed to have, and everybody thought Mike Gillislee would be a fantastic goal line back. He was in the first 2 weeks of the season, but Dion Lewis in the last 2 games has been getting all of that coveted goal line work for New England. I think you can't rely on him week to week, and I would kill him, hope that somebody else picks him up, and somebody else throws him in their lineup and plays him against me, because you can't trust the guy. But moving on from Mike Gillislee, our next guy, pretty complicated. He's not playing this week as a voluntary bye. His name is Marshawn Lynch. So he's not on bye, but he's suspended for the week. How do we feel about Marshawn Lynch?
Marshawn, he's a very tough one. We all know his ability, and we all know he's been out of football. He has shown some of that 2014 Marshawn Lynch this year. It's not like he hasn't shown it at all. But like many people have seen watching the NFL, the Raiders have been a massive disappointment this year. Everyone had them pegged as a top AFC team, and with that beefy O-line of theirs, they thought Marshawn would be running wild. It hasn't been the case so far. He hasn't even gotten more than 20 carries in a game yet. I would dump him. If you could get anything out of him at this point, target a Raiders fan. They will trade for him. I wouldn't cut him because, he does have potential for the second half of the year still. And honestly, I wouldn't want to marry him either because the Raiders, man, this year, it's a bad year for them.
Well, I kind of think that there's really a best case scenario for Marshawn Lynch if he's on your team. He's going to be suspended this game, and he's got another game to be played before his bye. And we talked about he's taking time off of football. He's older now. He's a beat up guy. He's taking a ton of hits. I think that it's unlikely to think that he's going to get better as the season goes on and be all of a sudden be able to go from the 10 carries he's getting a game to all of a sudden going up to 18 to 20. I think that physically he'll be able to handle it. So I think he's the guy that you're hoping maybe on that November 5th game against Miami on Sunday Night Football, if he can come out and off of this suspension and come out and have a big game, that's your chance to dump him and find someone who believes that you're going to get 2014 Marshawn Lynch. And I just think that's what you got to hope for, because I really don't see him being a workhorse towards the end of the season with his body holding up.
For me, I'm okay with killing him, but I really think that depends on where your team is. I mean, if you look at it, he's not playing this week. He's got a bye coming up in week 10. So if your team's sitting there at 2-5 and you desperately need to make the playoffs, this is a guy who's not going to play for 2 of the next 3 weeks. So I'm okay killing him if you need to go pick up somebody who's going to be relevant to you to help you make the playoffs. But I mean, if you're sitting there at 6-1 and you're coasting to the playoffs and you want to have a guy on your bench that maybe could be something from weeks 11 to 14, I'm also okay with marrying him. My official prognosis is kill, but I think it really depends on what your team is. So, I mean, if you can wait, see what he is on week 9. If he craps the bed in week 9, assuming he plays, then dump him, because he's got a bye week coming up in week 10, and you need to move on, I think, from Marshawn Lynch. Are we in agreement there? So I said personally kill, right? Dump, and I think that we had a marry. We're pretty divided
with the
on
hope
Marshawn
of
Lynch.
dumping.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's a complicated back to own. And coming up with another complicated back, Ty Montgomery in Green Bay. So he was the number 1 guy for snaps after 2 weeks in the NFL. In the first 2 weeks in the NFL, he had more snaps than any other player in the NFL. I mean, any other running back, sorry. More than any other running back. And then the broken ribs. Since then, Aaron Jones has come in and seems to be the starter. But what are you doing with Ty Montgomery as he gets healthier week to week? Is there still hope?
I think it's time to dump him. Dump him now. He still has some value to him. As we saw last week, Aaron Jones is the guy now, but Ty Montgomery will be the passing guy. He will be the pass protection guy. So he will be getting snaps. The question is, how effective will their quarterback be? If they can't move the ball and they're stuck on 3rd and 10, it's going to be a long year for the rest of the year for him.
I think that it's obviously a huge question mark because you don't know, especially coming out of the bye, how Mike McCarthy is going to try to go and handle Brett Hundley. But he did not look very good in his first start with Aaron Rodgers injured, and you saw that they tried to establish a running game.
That's putting it lightly. He looked
That's
horrible.
putting it real lightly. Oh, Jesus, that's a real big difference there. But I mean, you saw them trying to establish their run game with Aaron Jones, who's clearly become the better of the two in the first couple downs. And I think that it's pretty likely that Mike McCarthy's gonna realize that their offense is gonna be better if they can get ahead of the downs, ahead of the chains. And I worry that Montgomery's gonna lose really all the early down work and maybe just be the guy that catches some balls. I can't imagine him turning out to be anything more than a low floor or like just a low end flex play. I guess it's if your team's bad and you need someone who can maybe get you some points, keep him. And I'm leaning towards killing him though.
In one of my leagues, I actually did dump him. I had him, and in week 4, when he went down with those broken ribs, I managed to trade him away based on the value that he had in the first couple weeks. So I dumped him. I traded both him and Julio Jones away for Lev Bell, which I'm stoked about right now because, I mean, Julio's been good, but he hasn't been fantastic.
He hasn't been Julio.
He hasn't been Julio. He finally got his first touchdown this week, so let's see where he goes from that. But I think at this point, I think you got to hold on. I think you got to marry Ty Montgomery. He's slowly getting back into that offense. Like, sure, Aaron Jones has got more touches than him, but I think you got to hold and see what you got there because his value has gone way down since week 4, obviously with broken ribs and we're getting less touches. So I think you got to hold it out, wait and see. Running backs are hard to find. If you dump it, it's going to be hard to find a replacement for that kind of a guy. All right, so that was Marry, Dump, and Kill. We're going to move on here to a segment that we're going to call Waiver Wire Witch Hunt, where we talk about some guys you can find on the waiver wire and potentially slide right into your lineup. It's especially important this week in week 8 and also in week 9 because there's 6 buys this week and 6 buys next week. Relevant teams on bye, we've got the Tennessee Titans, Arizona Cardinals, LA Rams, Jacksonville Jaguars, Green Bay Packers, and the New York Giants. So we're just going to go around and talk about some players at most of the positions, which we think you can slide right in there. Let's start. Anybody got a running back they want to bring up?
So we talked about the dumpster fire that is the New England Patriots backfield. But when we talked about it, when you guys were both on the side of killing Mike Gillislee, Daniel, your point was the touches that Dion Lewis has been getting. 11 and then 13 rush attempts in the past 2 games. And not just that he's gotten the most, he's done the most with them. He's went 11 for 52 yards and then 13 for 76 yards and getting red zone work. Things are looking up for him. And what I found most interesting was Tom Brady coming out and saying after the game, he said, quote, "Whenever this guy touches the ball, good things happen for our team." And hearing stuff like that, trust is such a big factor in New England. I think that bodes very well for him. He's going against a defense that hasn't been too great. I think he's a real viable option in week 8.
Yeah, he's a great pickup. I would definitely pick him up. He's been averaging 5.84 yards per carry since week 5. He's got a great matchup this week against the Chargers D that have allowed the second most rushing yards per carry and per game to running backs this year. They have good edge players, but their defense is very soft up the middle. Dion Lewis has showed he can run between the tackles well. He does a good job hiding behind those O-lines, showing patience. I would play him as a great flex play this week.
And just a note, I would rather have James White in a PPR, but in a standard, I think Dion Lewis is starting to take away that role. So, I mean, there's some variance there, but Dion Lewis, totally a great pickup in standard, even half-point PPR. But I think full PPR, James White would be the guy there. But, I mean, James White's less available than Dion Lewis. There's the coin flip of Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington, if you like your coin flips. Because I personally don't know which back's going to take over there. Jalen Richard seems to be the guy in the pass catching, but DeAndre Washington is also getting double-digit carries in the last few weeks, so it's hard for me to pick in Oakland. Like, I have no idea what to do there.
Yeah, and so when I look at that, it makes me concerned because I feel like if you decide to go that route, you're going risk-reward in the fact that you might pick up the guy that gets 18 touches, a touchdown, and 100 total yards, or you might get the guy that gets 4 touches for 11 yards and you just basically waste a spot. I guess that's more if you need to assume a lot of risk, if your team maybe isn't that good, that's maybe the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot of risk to take on.
It seems every week, they have a game script, and they like to feature one of the two guys for that game. They'll look at the matchup, and Washington's more of a runner, and he's more of a between the tackles runner. Richard is their pass catcher. Richard definitely has the high big play ability, while Washington definitely is getting the carries. So, it is up to you and your personal preference. I personally would go with the Washington start because, he's going to get his guaranteed 15 between the tackle carries.
You might be right, but Richard's just a lot more fun to watch. That guy's shifty.
Absolutely.
A pickup for me off of running backs is Latavius Murray. So everyone's talking about Jarrett McKinnon, which, don't get me wrong, he is the better back to own in Minnesota. But we can't ignore is Latavius Murray's carries. So in the last 3 weeks, he's had 10 carries, 15 carries, and 12 carries. And he plays Miami this week. And who knows what's going to happen with Miami's offense. I mean, Jay Cutler's out. Does that make them better? Does that make them worse? Are they going to be on the field more? I don't know. But I'm just saying there is a game script. There's a possibility for Latavius Murray to blow up. So he's a good target. He's owned in not very many. Or his ownership percentage is below 50% in both Yahoo and TSN.
He's going to get all the red zone carries there, as we've seen last week.
I agree with that as well.
For my waiver wire pickup this week, it is Benny Fowler III. Emmanuel Sanders is out this week, and we've seen Simeon take a liking to Fowler. He gets a lot of red zone targets when he's in the game. He does a good job, turning his catches into yards. Last week, he stepped into the starting lineup, and he got 5 catches for 45 yards. He has a low-end flex play this week in deeper PPR leagues. He's got a decent matchup. The Chiefs like to think they have a really good defense, but in fantasy they have allowed the second most fantasy points to receivers this year. So don't be afraid to slide Benny Fowler into your lineup if you need him.
Yeah, and I mean, because I would say that Kansas City does overall have a good defense, but the problem is that their offense has been so good that the other teams are throwing the ball a lot, and I think it's realistic to think that Kansas is going to put up more points against Denver than they're accustomed to giving up, and that could result in a lot more pass attempts for Simeon, and it seems like Benny Fowler is kind of becoming his guy. I'm with you.
And like the Chiefs defense, they have one amazing corner in Marcus Peters. The other guys, not very good. They get roasted on a weekly basis, so Fowler would be a decent start this week.
Yeah, a guy I want to talk about for wide receivers is Josh Doxson. So I mean, Kirk Cousins, he's been doing great the last few weeks, but like I said earlier, he's got a lot of people to target. Josh Doxson, his usage in that offense is starting to go up with his potential, the amount that he goes up for balls. Just Josh Doxson, he gets targeted in the red zone, and Kirk Cousins likes to spread it out. He likes to throw it a lot. And I would go into some Josh Doxson for sure, especially with Terrell Pryor on the downswing.
Let's move on to the next segment.
Sure, yeah. The next segment, or do you want to talk a bit about quarterbacks and tight ends possible to stream?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Sure, okay. For me, I think tight ends are pretty rough. Like, I think it's hard, but if you say you got a tight end on the bye, which a lot of people do, I think somebody who's not very well owned is David Njoku. Nobody's talking about this guy in Cleveland. And he's got a touchdown every 5.3 receptions. So if you want one of those upside plays, that's hard to find. I mean, the guy gets targeted about 3 to 4 times a game, but every time he brings in the ball, he's got a really good shot at having one of those touchdown swings. For QB, I like Andy Dalton. So sure, he was bad last week. He's been bad most of the season. And I don't know, but all I'm saying is the Red Ranger this week, he gets...
Red Rifle.
The Red Rifle?
The Red
I call him the Red Ranger.
No,
personally.
he's the Red Rifle.
No, I've heard both.
He is the Red Rifle.
It's the Red Rider BB gun.
As J.J. Watt would say, his scripted plan that he came out with. That was great.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't know who's worse, though, between Andy Dalton and the Indianapolis defense, but I'm going to roll him against the Indianapolis defense all day long. So yeah, let's move along then to sneaky starts. Okay, so sneaky starts. Here we're going to be talking about guys who, they might be on your bench, and you might not know what to do with them, right? So like, it might be somebody that you're thinking, do I bench them? Do I play them? We're going to come out with a couple guys that we think you can play them with confidence this week. So anybody want to start us off with a sneaky start?
I got a QB that I absolutely love this week. Tyrod Taylor. Okay, this guy has been getting it done this year with virtually no weapons. He lost his tight end. Someone help me out here.
Charles Clay.
He lost Charles Clay, who is being extremely efficient this year, and it was obviously his favorite target. He lost him, but the team hasn't really skipped a beat. They have an excellent defense this year, which no one saw coming. And so if you talk about their matchup this week, they're playing the Raiders, who have been struggling this year. They also, I just love his matchup because Tyrod, he does well moving around the pocket. He gets out of the pocket. He's a great runner, and I just love the matchup against the Raiders. I think he's going to do great this week.
All right. Well, I'm going to go then to wide receiver, and my guy that I'm looking at is Devin Funchess. He's someone if you own, you're probably not sure if you want to start him or not. The last 2 weeks he's gone for 3.6 points and then 4.1 points. But the thing is his targets have stayed consistent. And he's been the guy who's kind of overtaken Kelvin Benjamin as the number one receiver. In the previous 2 weeks before that, people thought he was about to break out and go crazy. He had 70 yards and 53 yards, but 3 touchdowns in those 2 games. And I think kind of the factor that people overlook, that's kind of it's not something you can measure really by stats as much, but it's kind of that Cam Newton's a real chip on your shoulder kind of guy. And when he got doubted after the bad start that they had, he came out with 2 massive games in which Funchess was great, and now after 2 bad losses, it's the same idea that people are down on Carolina, and they got a divisional matchup against Tampa Bay, who's also not doing very well. I see this being a Carolina kind of breakout game, and Devin Funchess being the guy, and you can't overlook the fact that the Bucs are second last in wide receiver fantasy points against as well. So big week I think for Funchess.
Especially, Kelvin Benjamin is nursing a knee injury.
Yep.
He said he wasn't gonna. He was questionable for last weekend. He played, and he was half decent. He had 2 big catches. But yeah, I agree. I think with Benjamin nursing this injury, Funchess having some sort of a breakout year, I think that's a great pickup.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not so sure that I do agree about Devin Funchess. I don't seem to be as high on him as you do. I mean, I do like his potential on the offense. I think he's the de facto 2 for Cam Newton. I am a little bit worried about Cam Newton and his consistency. I mean, last week he was bad. The last 2 weeks before that he was great. I don't know the direction that Cam Newton is going, so I'm not as hot on Devin Funchess as you are, but I definitely agree that he should probably be picked up and probably be owned.
Right. He's probably owned. He's owned in 83% of leagues. I'm just saying right now, if I'm an owner of Funchess,
you're saying
you might be concerned about sitting him because he's had 2 bad weeks, and I'm saying don't get in your own head.
Right. Okay. I mean, then I'm going to talk about a similar wide receiver who I think if you're debating between these 2 guys, I'm going to go with my guy. So I mean, this is going to be a good debate because I want to know who you would start over the 2 of ours. I'd personally start Ted Ginn. So let's say you're debating between Ted Ginn and you're debating between Devin Funchess. I'm going to give my case for why I would start Ted Ginn Jr. So I was super high on Ted Ginn at the beginning of the year. Drew Brees spreads the ball around, and Drew Brees can, usually produce about 2 wide receiver 1s on his team. If you look last year, what he did with Brandon Cooks and Michael Thomas, who are both in the top 12. And I was really excited to start with. Sure, Ginn had a really rough start to the year. I'll be the first person to admit that. But Ginn is starting to come alive in this dominant New Orleans offense. Last week, he caught 7 of 7 targets for 141 yards, following week where he went 4 for 4 with 66 yards and a touchdown. So he's previously been known as a dropper in his career, but having caught all 11 of his targets in the last 2 weeks, I'm starting to see him and Brees build this rapport that I didn't think they had before. And I think Drew Brees is starting to see him as this guy that he can trust going to. This week, they're going up against a Bears defense, which, sure, they've been good. But Drew Brees at home, who traditionally has been a much better quarterback at home, I just think Ted Ginn gets the job done. I would throw Ted Ginn in there in almost any situation.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you too much on starting Ted Ginn. I mean, those numbers that pop out are the last 3 games that he's caught every target that's gone his way. That's pretty staggering for a guy who's known as a deep threat and usually is low percentage on that kind of thing. The only thing I could possibly say back is that he has been probably the most volatile player in fantasy history over the last 5 years. So he follows up. He could be following this great game up with something terrible. But I'm not going to debate you in the sense that I would start Ted Ginn for the time being until you see exactly how he fits into that role.
I guess my confidence is more in Drew Brees than it is
and especially
Ted
Drew Brees
Ginn.
At home as well too.
Mr. Consistent and against the Bears, who weirdly haven't good the last 2 weeks, but it's still the Bears. I mean, I gotta hope that Ted Ginn gets it done this week.
I see Ted Ginn as a solid wide receiver 3 this week. There's a lot of mouths to feed there, but yes, he has been producing as of late. And the major thing with him, getting up in age, he hasn't lost his step. He looks as fast as he ever has, And yeah, I totally agree. Start him with confidence.
But Darrian, if you had to pick, would you pick Ted Ginn or would you pick Devin Funchess if you had them both?
I would take Ted Ginn this week.
What about you, George?
I am going situational. I'm not going to give you a straight answer. I think that if I've got a good team, I feel very comfortable this game that Devin Funchess is going to at least put up some numbers.
Yeah.
But Ted Ginn's the guy where if I'm going more boom or bust, he could win you your week this week, Ted Ginn, I would say.
I agree. Traditionally, Ted Ginn's got a lower floor, higher ceiling, but I'm just starting to feel that floor rising up on him.
I guess that's my whole point with Ted Ginn is that the second you start to feel like, oh, I can believe in this guy, he's going to go 0 for 1 targets and you're going to be so confused about what just happened.
Do you want to make this interesting? Do you want to have a bit of a bet on Ted Ginn versus Devin Funchess this week?
What do we got?
You want to know what I don't know what stakes we can have, but I'm saying maybe the loser has to wear, I don't know, like clothespins on the nipples for 5 minutes the next podcast. I'm down for that.
The stakes just got high. The stakes
I don't know what else we can bet with, but I think that's a good bet.
Down. I'm here.
You'll do it? I'll do it.
Let's do it.
We're in different rooms, but I'll shake your hand if I could. Okay, Ted
Can
Ginn.
we make this one clothespin on one nipple?
I like this.
Only if they tie. I wear one, you wear one if they tie. I'm going full on both nipple clothespins if one of us wins here.
All right, we're here to ball. Let's do it. Darrian's
All right,
witness.
put the bet on the board. Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
It's Ted Ginn versus Devin Funchess. It's going down. Oh boy, Ted Ginn, don't let me down, bro. Don't let me down. All right, we're going to move along here to some dangerous defenses. So if your defense is on bye or your defense is just terrible, we're going to tell you about some defenses to stream. So anybody want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I love this Saints defense this week. They're playing the Chicago Bears.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you really quickly and say that I don't disagree, but just think about how crazy that sounded.
I know. I've been thinking
I don't think I would ever say that
That's the wildest
ever.
statement I've ever heard.
I know.
But I'm not telling you you're
And
wrong.
not just this game. They've
It's
been
been
good
a
this
crazy
season.
year. It's been a crazy year in the NFL. Nothing is as it seems. Okay, so they've done a great job retooling this year. You know, the first round pick Lattimore, he looks legit. He looks like a real shutdown corner. They've done a really good job beefing up that front seven. I mean, Akeem Hicks. This guy is not Akeem Hicks. Cam Jordan. This guy is a defensive MVP candidate. The way he's been playing, unbelievable. He's been overlooked for so many years.
No question.
Being on the bottom of the barrel defense, and finally he's getting some credit on a good defense. Their matchup this week is against the Chicago Bears. Mitchell Trubisky. We all know he's been being sheltered like a little baby on that offense. You know, they pound the rock. 4 completions last week. They pound the rocks.
In a win.
I know. It is crazy.
The best part was I'm listening to some people talking on like the NFL Network, and they're like, it was really great to see how Mitchell Trubisky really managed that game and did what he had to do. He had the ball off.
Yeah.
That's all he did.
You know, he's not making those bonehead Cutler picks, but yeah, it's very, very, very low ceiling on his potential right now.
Yep.
And, you know, the Saints, you know, last week they only had 4 fantasy points in standard leagues, but the 3 previous weeks before, 62 fantasy points combined. You know, they're balling out right now, and this is a great matchup against a rookie quarterback.
And I just wanted to say with you as well, to further your point, the Saints' offense is phenomenal. So there's just, I would see almost no scenario in which Mitchell Trubisky is able to have 4 completions in a win, because they're going to have to catch up in points. And all of a sudden, if you start making Mitchell Trubisky be the guy who's going toe-to-toe with Drew Brees, that's where the opposing defense can get fantasy points with sacks, interceptions, potentially a pick 6. So I'm with you.
All right, George, who's your guy? Or who's your defense? Sorry.
Well, there was one, just looking through my fantasy league, they're owned in 63% of leagues in Yahoo, but that only puts them as the 11th most owned defense, so you could potentially get them. And if you can, Cincinnati's the easiest choice ever. They're playing Indianapolis this week, and I guess I'm going to just bypass that, because if you can get them, that's the easiest stream. But otherwise, I'm looking at Buffalo, and just as they're to me, they're the kind of defense that you look at to stream, because they've been a model of consistency this year. They haven't been amazing by any means, but they haven't scored less than 7 points in fantasy all season in any of their games. And they're playing Oakland at home. We all know defenses are much better at home than they are on the road. And Oakland is just such a...
But Amari Cooper's going to get 3 touchdowns this week, right?
Maybe 4, honestly. I'm just playing the odds. But I guess I'm looking when I'm streaming a defense, I'm often looking towards safety, and I feel Blake Buffalo is a pretty safe pick this week.
I do agree with that. And when I said Amari Cooper's going to get 3 touchdowns this week, I mean, it happened last week. Therefore, according to public opinion, it's just going to happen every week.
There's
right?
absolutely no way. Their first-round pick, Tre'Davious White, is an absolute steal. I think it was first round. It might have been high second round, but he has been an absolute stud all year. He will be shadowing Amari Cooper. Do not expect much out of Amari Cooper this weekend.
I almost never expect anything out of Amari Cooper because you can't. It's like he did this all last year too. It's like bad week, amazing week, bad week, amazing week. But he ends up as that wide receiver 15-16 because he's got such a low floor. But when his ceiling is high, it's so high, right? So I mean, hopefully this isn't the week against Buffalo he blows up, and I don't think it will be.
Don't count on him this week.
Who do you got, Daniel?
I had, as you mentioned, Cincinnati written down. I mean, I think Indianapolis, they're just garbage. Like, they got shut out last week by the Jaguars. And personally, I'm one of those people, I stream a defense every week because I don't think a defense, you should have a defense on your roster because they're a good defense. You should have a defense on your roster because they're playing a bad offense. And a team that is playing a bad offense, although my official thing was Cincinnati coming into this, but another team potentially is the Falcons. I'd hate to do it personally myself, and I feel weary about it, but they're playing the Jets. The Jets haven't been incredible. Josh McCown has been getting better and better, but if I do think there's a certain safety to playing the Jets, I personally would go Cincinnati or either of the other two of your picks because those are the 3 teams that I had written down, but as a potential 4th option, Atlanta's not horrible. I think you could do a lot worse.
Not horrible, but I'd put them behind all of our choices personally.
I'd hide behind their
Definitely.
choices as well. Yeah, for sure. I think you hit it on the money with Buffalo. You hit it on the head. And I would go with one of those ones, but I think Atlanta you can get away with if you're in a desperate position.
All right, let's move on.
All right, so we're going to move on to some guys that you think you can pick up or we should be looking into for the rest of the year. So guys that we should be keeping our eye on for the rest of the season. Some of these guys, they might have the potential to win you your league. Yeah, we may be looking ahead to the playoffs now.
I think that's how we're trying to look at this right now. These are guys you can potentially still get on the waiver wire or even just on the cheap in a trade potentially. And not someone that you might just be able to plug and play, but someone who you feel has a chance to become a guy that's a staple in your lineup and can put you over the edge to win your league.
Totally. A dominant second half of the season player.
Exactly.
I'll get it started. You know, I love D.D. Westbrook. You know, he hasn't played a regular season game yet, but man, watching him in the preseason, everyone knows preseason and regular season are different. And I'm the first guy to tell you, don't look at preseason like, you know, the be-all, end-all. But this guy, D.D. Westbrook, his abilities are very, very, how should I say, they translate well to the NFL game. You know, he's a very crisp route runner. He's electrifying after the catch. He's got the speed, and he's got the personality. Like, if you've heard him talk, and he knows he's the guy. He knows he's a guy that can get the job done when he's in the game. There's no confidence issues with him. I would be a little scared of Blake Bortles, but, you know, with that run offense they have, play action's been working all year. They have been kind of sheltering Blake Bortles, and this guy is one of those guys that can turn a 1-yard catch into an 80-yard touchdown.
I just want to say I'm a bit more than just a little scared of Blake Bortles.
Yeah, generally, I'm thoroughly conflicted because I think all the points are right in that, especially with Allen Robinson out, he clearly has the potential to just be that number one.
It's
guy
a weak
in that
receiving
offense.
core. It's a very weak
it's
receiving
great
core.
Talent in D.D. Westbrook.
So if he is as good as he appears to be, he could be by far and away the number one guy. But Blake Bortles. So
this guy, and not only that, but this
know.
guy is owned in less than 3% of any league and any website. Like, pick this guy up. If you have a spot on your bench, I highly recommend putting him on there. You know, he said he's going to be back for week 9. The coach confirmed that. And, you know, there's really nothing to lose with this guy. I think he can come in, be the number one target right away, get maybe 8 to 10 targets a game. Yeah. I know that sounds really high, but man, this guy's got some ability.
Yeah, I do really agree with that. Like, the talent is through the roof, and with Allen Robinson down throughout the year, I mean, there have been some other guys on Jacksonville, but there's the potential there for some really high ceiling plays.
Who do you have, Daniel?
For myself, I've got Danny Woodhead. So this guy, he has kind of snuck through because he got that injury back in week 2. and he's been on the IR, so he's eligible to return in Week 11, and Roto World reported yesterday that he's on track to come back for that. If you look at the run game in Baltimore, well, there hasn't been a run game in Baltimore. Terrence West has been either injured or awful, right? Buck Allen is kind of getting the passes, but he hasn't been consistent week to week. So I think when Danny Woodhead comes back, he could just be a force, because Baltimore is usually a team that throws a lot to the running back, and Danny Woodhead is one of the most prolific pass-catching backs in history. And like, running backs, they're hard to find. Like, they're so scarce, and the waiver wire just is not full of them at all. So if you can get Danny Woodhead for free right now, I think this is a guy that could be a game changer week 11 on for you, and he's definitely a guy that I'm targeting in my leagues.
Yeah, I think it's a fine idea that he might be able to come back and certainly provide an option. I just don't see him as anything more than a flex. I mean, he's a pass-catching guy who would go into a three-headed backfield. I'm definitely not as high on him as you are.
Well, define a three-headed backfield.
Well, I mean, just at least in the sense that you have two guys kind of competing for the first and second down role, and maybe Danny Woodhead can squeeze his way in there a tiny bit, but his pass catching role is primarily where he's defined, coming back from injury as well.
He's gotten carries in his past too.
He has, but he's older. He's been on injured reserve. I have a tough time believing he's going to come in and all of a sudden get 15 to 18 touches.
Well, I think he could, just because Alex Collins, he's been getting the carries, but like the yards per carry has been awful. He hasn't been good. So I think Danny Woodhead comes in and he takes over that Alex Collins role a little bit with the carries, and you see Buck Allen get considerably less reception. So sure, it is a three-headed monster and coming in a little bit, but like Terrence West coming in was going to be the guy, and Terrence West has been awful. So I do have the feeling that there is kind of a power vacuum there, a bit of a position for somebody to come in and really take over that backfield. So I have hopes in Danny Woodhead.
Just for the record on your comment about Alex Collins not getting any like yards, doing things with his carries. Last game he did go 10 for 30, but prior to that he's been over 4 yards a carry every single game this season.
I'd like to. Do you have it up there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
My
mistake.
Week two he went 7 attempts, 42 yards, then 9 for 82, then 9 for 82 again, then 12 for 55, then 15 for 74.
All right, I gotta recant this. I am sorry, Alex Collins. There has been some good. So what was that one? 12 for what?
12 for 55. And that was the worst of all those
That
games.
was the worst. Yeah, okay. Alex Collins, okay. I guess he's... my conception there is a bit off. Thank you for pulling up the stats.
Because the thing with... so I have him on my team, so I'm aware. Right. He's basically a guy you're scared to start because he hasn't even had a single touchdown. Right. He catches no passes. But he is the guy getting the first and second down work, and he's doing a decent amount with it. He's just not getting you the big plays or anything.
Personally, I wouldn't touch anyone on that offense.
I agree.
This is a horrible offense. Yes, Danny Woodhead's going to come back from injury. They have no receivers there. You know, I could see him definitely getting some touches and some targets, but at the end of the day, how effective is he going to be, for one, coming off of his injury? He is an older back, and two, how effective is this offense going to be for the rest of the year in general? I personally wouldn't touch him, but
the only guy I'm touching on that offense is Justin Tucker.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I'm going to stick with my belief in Danny Woodhead. I'm still going to be targeting him, but that is a good point in Alex Collins. But I still love the talent in Danny Woodhead. And
sure.
Joe Flacco, in the past, has thrown a lot to running back.
Sure. So I'm going to go with a guy who's owned in 44% of leagues and plays for a garbage team, which doesn't help. But I'm looking at Marlon Mack, the running back for Indianapolis, drafted in the 4th round this year, and has kind of progressively seen more carries. And, I mean, it's certainly notable the fact that he's playing behind Frank Gore, who is doubted every single year about being able to continue.
I love me some Frank Gore.
And I love him too. But the fact of the matter is, it's just...
It's time to pass the torch.
It's also, so it's not just the fact that he's 34 and slowing down. It's the fact that what is Indianapolis' priority? They're clearly playing for next year at this point. We don't even know if Andrew Luck's going to come back the rest of the year. And they've got this guy in the 4th round who's showing explosive plays, who's becoming a much better, overall better back as the weeks are going by. And I think it makes total sense that they're going to try to showcase him as much as possible, or at the very least just see what they have in him. And you note the fact that Robert Turbin, who had been playing the third down role, is out for the season with an elbow injury. So all the passing work will go to Marlon Mack. He's the guy that's shown more explosive plays. It's tough to trust anyone in that offense, but it's certainly believable that he can be the clear number 1 back, and to be able to pick someone up at this point in the season who could become that kind of guy is a huge opportunity.
I personally love Marlon Mack. He's got that big playability. We've seen it in his limited touches that he's had. Frank Gore's a limited player at this point. You know what you're gonna get out of him. He's a great passing protector guy, which you know, you can't overlook that in terms of a third down back. Marlon Mack has made some mistakes in that area, and that's primarily why he's been kept off the field on third down. But for the second half of the season, I totally agree. I think they're going to start looking at what players they have now, who to build around for the future, and I think he's definitely going to be featured in that offense a lot more in the second half of this season.
Yeah, definitely. Frank Gore's carries have been diminishing, unfortunately, as much as I love me some Frank Gore. I love his career. I think he's been very consistent for so many years, and I have him, and you can always count on him for about 50 yards or so, but Marlon Mack is definitely the up-and-coming guy in Indianapolis, and I love him. Another guy, just honorable mention to Greg Olsen. Take a look out, see if Greg Olsen's there. He's got that kind of top-end, tight-end talent, and it's been reported recently that he's on pace to return for Week 12 from IR, so if you're in Dumpsville and tight end, which a lot of people are, this is a guy with top 5 potential.
And also just if you have the roster spot available.
Absolutely.
Because the whole point now is you have to pick him up a week or two early.
While
but
he's
if you
free.
can afford to do it, he could pay massive dividends.
Yeah, for sure. I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in. I wish everybody out there some luck in Week 8 and ramping up for the playoffs. We got some stakes going on for the weekend with some clothespin bits.
Well,
what are you going to call this? Clothespin bet?
I don't know. All I know is we're going to find out what Daniel's pain threshold is like next week.
I don't think so, man. Teddy Ginn's going to get it done for me, bro. But I'm kind of hoping for a tie. I think, one clothespin on both of our nipples. Like that, that could be some fun.
I have no interest in a tie. I'm here for the W.
You're right. It's not going to happen. What are the odds of that? But again, thank you all for tuning in. We wish you the best of luck in your Week 8 and onward fantasy football. And thank you very much.
Talk to you next week.
See ya.